Hi, Stephanie. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coaching Success Podcast.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. I can't wait for you to share with the listeners everything that I think is going to be of great value for them to hear and kind of take away with them today. So what we'll do to get started is I'd love for you to share with them kind of where you are right now. Currently, what are you doing with your kind of integrative health coaching, background? What's your kind of day-to-day like? And then we'll take it back a little bit and talk about where you got started, so on and so forth. But give everybody a little idea as to kind of what you're doing present day.
Amazing. Yeah. So present day, I've built my dream career. It's something that I've always kind of had in the vision of my life, but couldn't really put the pieces together of how to actually make it happen. So I have built what I like to call a world-class integrative root cause wellness practice. I'm based in Niagara Falls, Canada, but I work across North America. I see people virtually 100% of the time, especially in the world situation. So it's amazing. I work one-on-one primarily, and I also run some group programs, masterminds, and just helping troubleshooting people's health and their life. And it's absolutely a dream come true.
Wow, that's amazing. Good for you for kind of pressing forward and making that a reality. What did you do before? Have you always done this? Has it always been a passion? Where did you kind of start out with your career, whether it be, health and wellness or something else, and kind of what led you to this?
Yeah, that's a big question. And I always kind of wonder, where do I start by answering this? So, it was a very long-winded journey in order to get where I am today, honestly. So I'm in my early 40s, and I had, I guess, what I like to refer to as the fork in the road, the proverbial rock bottom place. So I was working I had a lot of loves and passions. I never really felt like I fit into the world. I was kind of all over the place. People, even my family, they were kind of like, well, you're misguided. What are you doing? Get a real job, all of these kind of things, because I was always a free spirit. I loved to learn and travel and teach. So I ended up moving overseas. I learned a second language, French. I taught English as a second language overseas. I came back to Canada, where I'm from, and I built my career in this industry of teaching English and French as a second language, to the point, and I was really successful in this industry. I was a director of a big private school in Toronto. I even had my own school for a while. And I just kind of hit that crisis moment where, you're living the dream, the picket white fence, in a relationship. I had 2 kids, and I hit that fork in the road. It was an emotional, mental, spiritual crisis where I was dead. I was dying. And one thing led to another. Is I was just forced to kind of pick up the pieces from ground zero, is rebuild my life as a single mom and figure out, I lost my job. I lost everything basically. So health wasn't actually at the forefront, but when I worked backwards, learning all the things that I learned along the journey, is I was struggling a lot with my physical health, my gut health. My adrenals were tanked. I'm very high performance, I'm very much an achiever, all of these kind of things. So living life hard, burning the candle at both ends, dealing with addictions to cope, all of these kind of things led me down a path because I was unaware. It's like you're living a life as a robot, or going through the mechanics of what life is supposed to be. The job, the husband, the picket fence, the dog, the kids, the car in the driveway. But it wasn't the story. It wasn't my story. And in my soul and in my heart, I knew that, but I just, you go through these emotions and you don't know even where to begin. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's kind of where it started. And it started with just taking, for the first time in my life, time for me, of going to a gym, going to a swimming pool, of taking better care of myself. And that's where it started to snowball. And having this background in teaching, and I always knew that I wanted to teach people, to teach and coach. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll just life coach. Mm-hmm. And in that search, it led me to different programs. So I started off working in, learning about nutrition, and I did a nutrition program and a personal training program, but it still, even for my own healing journey, it still wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. We're doing these, and today I call it the foundations of health resiliency, and it's clean food, clean water, good sleep, moving our body, but it still wasn't enough. Yep. And that's where I kept digging. Yes. And searching for the root causes, the root cause of wellness. And I stumbled upon a podcast one day, and it always makes me emotional because it's like, it's life-changing. I love podcasts. And so I listened to the Dr. Cabral concept, and I just was hooked. And I was every day, every episode, I just kept listening and listening and listening. And it's so, it was really life-changing. And I signed up, I think I was the first or second class of the Integrative Health Practitioner program, but I had been listening to the podcast for about 6 months. And that's kind of my style, is I really like to investigate before I sign up. That was one of the pieces which led me into the functional medicine realm, and just putting all the other pieces in place, like the rain barrel effect and the toxicity and deficiencies and toxic burden on the body, and looking at our health from an optimal way. And that's when I started really looking at my own health deeply, and understanding that my gut was in trouble. I had really bad candida overgrowth, bloating. I just kind of lived with it. I was just like, I thought that was just normal life. Hormone imbalance. I just was like, well, this is just how I've always been. So my story wasn't the story where I had been actively searching practitioners or health guidance per se, but it's something that kind of came about. And I always kind of laugh when people are like, well, just tune into your body. I literally could not feel. I just didn't know what was normal. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like the long version of this story, or I don't know, short version, long version anymore. But every time I tell the story, every time I tell the story, it's a little bit of a different version, but essentially that's kind of what led me to where I am today, to build that practice. So it was through my own story.
Of course. Yeah. And I actually recently just posted on my Instagram a post that Sarah Blakely, who she's the CEO of Spanx, and she posted, she has all these inspirational mugs, and she was drinking out of a mug, and on the mug it said, storms don't always come to destroy everything in its path. Sometimes they come to clear the path. And, that rock bottom can so oftentimes be what we need to see a clearer vision and see a different path and get from one place to the next, to kind of change where we're at, that pivot point, that fork in the road, whatever you want to call it, right? There's oftentimes a lot of hardship and a lot of heartache that comes with that point. And a lot of people decide to take a different road. Some people just bury themselves in that sadness, and you used it completely to your advantage to kind of change your course, which is so inspirational.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I felt like it was kind of, we can either fall victim to our story and our sadness and our rock bottom and kind of play that, but that's never been me ever. I'm just not wired that way. So it's like, well, I don't have a choice. It's either just jump in the pool and learn how to swim.
Yep.
that's how it feels. And it's even how it feels today in this business, because this is it. There is no backup plan. I don't have a full-time job in the background. This is it.
Yes.
So
share with our listeners a little bit about what, if you were to identify kind of one of the biggest obstacles in your transition, and it can be an emotional obstacle, an actual, business-based obstacle, some sort of an obstacle that was presented to you in the transition of, that fork in the road. What would that obstacle be, and kind of what did it teach you?
Yeah, there's a lot of obstacles. I think the main one, when we get into, especially midlife, no previous background per se in health. So yes, I have some transferable skills like coaching and teaching and speaking and working with people, which all transfers over. I think the scariest thing, and even to this day, is the learning curve. Because we don't just wake up and say, I'm going to help people with their health. There's a lot to learn, and it's very overwhelming. It's very confusing, and there's a lot of different opinions, and just a lot of information to navigate. And it's hard to discern even what to teach or how to help people. So we can have a lot of I think the biggest obstacles come from ourselves, of the beliefs of self-doubt, of not being enough, of not having enough credentials, of not knowing enough, all of these kind of things. And especially within this industry in helping people with their health, it's a lot of responsibility. And it's not something that we just kind of do lightly. So I think that's one of the biggest ongoing commitments to, at the end of the day, learning and growing and continuing, because it is a continued education. And we receive foundations. I mean, the IHP program was the program that it was the catalyst that really, because I did a bunch of different programs, and I'm doing a bunch of programs right now and continuing my education and CE certificates ongoing, but having the basics. And that's when you can kind of get down these rabbit holes, just go back to the basics, the foundations. Yep. And that's where, even when you're dealing with really complicated people, and it's like, oh, this is too much for me to handle, here's the breakthrough. So you might have a really complicated person in front of you, and they've got high-level issues and things that you don't even understand, and they're seeing different practitioners. I guarantee you, they are not doing the basics.
And sometimes the basics fixes a lot of the other issues.
And sometimes that's all we need to do to make the biggest shift. So know that by helping people understand the foundations of toxicity and how to clean up and make the little upgrades every day, where it's not a source of stress and overwhelm. Because again, I'm guilty of this. I'm the too much person. I'm the too much information. I really exhaust things. So it's knowing to share, okay, what are some of the foundations that we can control, that we can take control, because just that, it's about taking it into our own hands and being empowered, of course, as opposed to feeling victim to our situation and our obstacles.
Yes. And so oftentimes when you fix the foundation, for clients who maybe aren't as in tune to their body, or they know there's things that are wrong, right? Because other doctors or other practitioners have told them so, but they may not be as in touch with their body as they need to be. And just by changing simple deficiencies, like, so, doing a daily nutritional support shake or a multivitamin to get somebody more nutrients can change their entire outlook, their motivation. So you give them that crumb and they start to feel better, and then they're willing to take the next step, and you kind of meet them where they're at in that entire entire process. But like you said, just starting foundationally with most people, especially uneducated, people that aren't as educated in the health realm, can be life-changing, and you haven't done this, intricate, complicated plan.
Yeah. And that's the irony, because even really highly educated practitioners, they're working at such a high level up here where they're not necessarily thinking, let's just swap out the bath filter. Mm-hmm. So we're not soaking in chlorine.
Right.
I had a client who just changed out their drinking counter cooking bath water. And in 3 weeks, the eczema around the dry skin cleared up. Was it the water? I don't know. Was it the de-stressing and the relaxation, the clean eating? I don't know. Was it the extra protocols? I don't know. It's a collection, because it's not one thing that gets us sick.
Of course.
It's all the little things. So that's when I start to feel overwhelmed by how much I have to learn and how vast and how many rabbit holes we can go down in with health content. Mm-hmm. Most are not taking care of those basics.
Yes. Yeah. And I always say air, the air we're breathing, the food we're eating, the water we're drinking. I mean, those are, in my opinion, the 3 things that are sometimes left unaccounted for. I can't tell you how many clients have come to us and they're like, oh, don't worry, I'm taking these great supplements from such and such a place, and I also do this. So like, I know what all this stuff means, but they're not filtering their water, and they're not necessarily eating the best food. But what goes in our body, supplements isn't going to change that, or, they're super stressed, and there's so many ways to account for health. And yeah, again, just starting with some of the basic needs that our body needs, like food, air, and water, and
technology. My fourth is technology.
As in getting it out.
Yeah.
Yes. It can be, incredibly, incredibly changing. So let's switch gears a little bit, because I do want you to expand, because I think you have a lot of information to offer here on how you had this bigger vision. Because as we were kind of talking before the show, your practice isn't, kind of just a smaller you. What was your vision for your practice? What's your future vision, and kind of where you're at? Yeah.
So I think this kind of goes back to even my younger years as a teen and a child, as I always had this big vision. It was part of also feeling kind of stuck and not fitting and finding my place in the world, because I was a change maker. Even with my school that I had, the idea was to build a school and build schools around the world, and, do a lot of fixing the world. So that vision never left me. The vision of world changer, world class. But what I was missing is that we need a lot of changing the world starts with us. So when we start individually and we work on our health and deal with our trauma and all of the things, that's really where the alchemy happens. So by having that big vision, it always starts with us. So I guess what that is having, what does that look like? It's not just a job. I don't want just a 9 to 5. It's leaving a real legacy for future generations, even well before I'm gone. And that's, I think, the vision of that's maybe different, is that this to have that vision of a world where we are really living whole and looking at things from a root cause. It's not going to happen overnight. This is the long game. So being honest with yourself, cultivating a vision based on your core values, getting clear. Again, when I had lost myself and lost my identity and who I wasn't in tune with my core values. I didn't have values. So that's the first step, as an individual person, is knowing what are your top 3 to 4 core values, and building a business, building an organization with those same values, because it's like our internal compass. It's what guides us in life. We see through it as if there are filters. We make decisions based on these values, on who we hire, what we spend our money on, and the work that we do, and even the clients who are attracted to us. It's based on these things of value. So maybe one of those values is integrity, or health, love, freedom to choose, freedom to express, freedom to have control over our bodies, what we put in, etc. So all of these kind of things act as the foundation of a business and a practice of building something bigger. And I look at even Dr. Cabral as he's my mentor, because what he's doing, he has a very big vision.
That's for sure.
That's for sure. And I just look at that as, wow, he is so successful in accomplishing that vision, because it starts with what? It starts with teaching. It starts with education first. It starts with teaching the foundations. That's really what this is built on. And that's where I share that strong passion and that alignment with him as a mentor that got me doing this. And the whole teaching has been from the start is, here's your foundation. Just do what I do. Take the words out of my mouth. Here's the protocols. Here's your business in a box, but then find your own voice in the space. Mm-hmm. Learn from other people. There's no boundaries, right? There's no limits. And that's kind of where I took that and I run with that. That's what I have for this, for me and myself and my business and who I'm helping. It starts with that same: help yourself, help your family, your friends and client, and heal the world.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think it's so important to, highlight the fact where your values for your business are the same things that you gave yourself. You had to find and give yourself early on. And it's kind of like, you can't build a house on sand, right? You had to start at the foundation. There was so much about what you gave yourself that you had to do before you got to the point where it was a successful business, right? Because then it's like inauthentic. You're kind of preaching X, Y, and Z, but it hasn't been part of your core. And starting in seems like, okay, how is helping me going to help me create this huge vision? But it's such an important step, because then you step into your business or your space with so much more power, strength, authenticity, and that's received by everyone. I mean, we're just energetic human beings, and everybody senses when your vision is your passion. And like you said, it's not your job. I mean, this is what you just want to leave here in the world. You're happy to get paid for it, but this is just your passion, living it out.
Right. And that was the internal crisis and struggle, is that we're not taught this in school. Or maybe if you don't have a mentor in your own family, it can be very confusing when you don't have an actual model of what that looks like in your own surroundings, your parents, anyone in your family, like no one. So you're kind of banging through life like, this makes no sense. And that's where all those other mental health issues can come about, where, we feel very depressed and anxious and misunderstood. And we turn to things that are coping mechanisms that are not healthy, that are addictive, et cetera. And we can kind of go down this downward spiral. But in order to have that light bulb moment come on, I think we have to kind of hit those lower states of life and expression and feel, that expression. In order to heal, we have to feel. Yeah. So it's a constant metaphor too of the individual person that we're helping, where it's not a linear journey. And I don't expect for other people, I don't expect it to be as long-winded, to go through all the trials and tribulations. So if I can make that journey a little less painful and not so drawn out, where, to a character fault as well, kind of being stubborn and I got to learn it myself and do it myself, where finally surrendering and asking for help and finding a teacher and a mentor is so important. And that's kind of what I feel like that's really a voice that I have to give back, and transform, alchemize that pain into a purpose.
Of course. Yeah. And the mentor piece is, most successful people have mentors. And when I say successful, not necessarily financial, but most people that are living out the best version of their life have mentors, because like you said, it is not something that's culturally or socially kind of handed to us or encouraged, right? We're taught in school to just, especially here in the States, I'm not sure what it's like in Canada, but just like put your head down, learn what we're teaching you, and you're kind of this slave to whatever they decide to teach you. And there's so much less thinking that happens outside of the box. And then what, all of a sudden at 18, 19 years old, you're supposed to have these like grand dreams made up in your head when someone's kind of kept you in this box for, the better part of 12 years. So to have mentors that have accomplished, right, that something such as you or Dr. Cabral have, is important to have somebody to guide you on a path that's so different than what our culture and society expects.
Yeah, it's so different. And that's exactly it. Is I just saw him as such an out of the box person, where even today, being in this industry, it's a constant, I sometimes, if I veer into one way or another, I just have to tune back in to his way. And I think that's another point too here, is that having the integrative perspective, having no, he always says no dog in the race, is so critical, because I think that's what we're trying to do here in the space. And that's, again, part of the vision, is bridging the gap between conventional, alternative, Eastern modalities, to say there isn't one way. It's a collection of ways. So
and the collection looks different for everybody.
Yeah.
Where, lots of people, even in the natural space, do think that everybody should be going in this direction, but it's the collection of what makes sense for some individuals. It doesn't look the same as others. And the acceptance and kind of able to have some of that fluidity is important when you're working with the kind of people we do.
Yeah, because there's blind spots. And that's where I, even as an example, I can use my own family. So working with my children and doing all the things in the natural, holistic, integrative approach, there's still things that I may be missing in terms of conventional medicine and ruling things out, where I feel it's so important to have that openness within the space, is to look at all the angles.
Of course.
Yeah.
Good. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and it seems like you love education and you love continuing to learn. So I'm curious, obviously we know the Rain Barrel Effect you've read, and IHP, you've done that course. What are some of your other favorite learning tools, whether they're courses or books, or if you had to kind of like pick one that's been maybe close to as impactful as IHP or the Rain Barrel Effect, or maybe even a podcast, since you said you like those, what would be something that our listeners could kind of take away?
Right. That's hard. So I have this approach. It's like a wheel, right? It's a circle, and there's all these different pillars. So I feel like, depending on my season, I kind of look at it as, okay, so there's nutrition, exercise, rest, recovery, the biochemistry, mindset, emotional balance, and spirituality. Based on where I am in that circle, sometimes I will hit maybe a roadblock. And I mean, this is even for my own personal story. So I'm the kind of person that will exhaust. So even after finding functional medicine and biochemistry, I still felt like that's not enough. And that's where I got into more of the emotional balancing and the trauma work and things like that. So, and working on the subconscious mind. That's one of the books, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind is one of the books that I feel that was really life transforming of 2021 this year, recently. So I feel like everybody has a different season. So you might want to go deep into the biochemistry. Like right now I'm studying functional blood chemistry.
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm into right now. But I'm always kind of going into different things. Another one is doing a lot of work in mold and Lyme. So looking at the toxicity from that, the neurology, so PANS and PANDAS, working with a few different mentors in that space. But I will kind of go all over the place based on what season I'm in. So I would just say to people, kind of, if you feel like you need more of the spirituality, the power of now,
yep.
Right? Is a really good one. Anything by Deepak Chopra. I've got hundreds of books. I'm building the collection, just like Dr. Cabral, on my shelf of books. But I feel like there's a time and place for everything based on what season we are in.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Because you receive and can use the information that you're learning so much better if you're kind of in the place to receive it too. And it's making sense for whatever place you're in at that moment in time. The power of the subconscious mind, I love too. And I'm sure you've seen it quite a bit in your practice, that you can oftentimes be doing all the physiological things well, right? Everything from a physical standpoint, you've kind of dialed in and things just aren't getting better. And there's such a huge mind connection to so much of this. And in my opinion, mental health is the easiest thing for our conventional world to ignore. It's typically the one that falls to the wayside. And I think our space is unique in the sense that it takes that into account. And we realize the extreme pull that it can have one way or the other. It can help heal in incredible ways, or it can hold us back in, really deep ways. And it's not until we kind of uncover it.
Yeah. And that was kind of the roadblock that I hit personally, is there's only so much you can measure. Mm-hmm. Right. And with the energy and the spiritual and the emotional and the mindsets, it's very hard to actually do a lab and measure where we're at. So,
yes. And even if you have the lab, I'm like, well, clearly the cortisol is high and we have high calcium. I mean, you're clearly under a lot of stress, and, people can bury their heads for a long time, really deep. And even when there's some quantitative data that would suggest it's something, we need to tap into, you have to wait until the time is right, because some people are ready, some people aren't, but it can sometimes be what's kind of holding us back.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's, I think I've healed a lot of my cortisol and adrenal stress just by tapping into more of that, the faith and spirituality, emotional balancing, and dealing with some of the deeper childhood trauma issues that we all have. But getting to that place, it looks different from everybody. And sometimes we do have to build up that resilience by doing the basics, working on our nutrition, moving our body, running the labs, taking the supplements, all those mechanical things, to get to that point, to peel back still the layers of the onion. And that can be the longer version of that story, that is not as easily accessible. But I feel like once we do the work, we come to a time and place to be ready. And sometimes people, we don't necessarily even want to go into that stuff, and that's okay too.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Because it's all when the time is right, it will be there.
Yeah.
If you had to give one of your kind of most favorite or, important pieces of advice. So say there's, listeners that are maybe just starting out, or they have this passion for a huge vision the way you do and Dr. Cabral did. Do you have a piece of advice for like aspiring integrative health practitioners, maybe people that are already in it? What kind of advice feels like it's most true for you?
It's the accumulation effect. It's knowing that every single day I'm waking up in gratitude. I'm grateful to have woken up today. Is starting each and every day with a grain of gratitude, and just making small upgrades to be a better person than I was the day before. And we're never failing. We never fall off. There's no wagon to fall off, because each day is an opportunity to continue. Mm-hmm. Because when we fall down or off the wagon, it's not a start again. It's, I'm going to continue. And we build off of all that experience from our past. So nothing is ever a waste. Nothing is ever a fail. Nothing is ever, not good enough. It's all moving into the direction of accumulation. And that's really where it comes down to choice.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Choice of how you're going to look at it. Yeah. I think Dr. Cabral just posted on his Instagram, maybe last night or earlier, a quote about success and how failures will always teach you way more than being at the top of the mountain, and knowing that everybody's on this path. And you're right. The failures aren't this setback. They're just a redirection, or they're some sort of a motivation to keep going. I mean, they can be looked at, sure, as setbacks, but like you said, it's a choice of what you're going to kind of envision as far as that path is concerned. And we can learn so much from little setbacks and have it kind of propel us forward in a way that, that's probably more honestly.
That's when the breakthroughs happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. All that great stuff. So Stephanie, please share with our listeners where they can find you, where they can hear more, where they can find you as far as, whether it's Instagram or a website, kind of where you're at.
Sure. So my name is Stephanie Jackson, IHP. My website is thefreedomtolive.ca, and it's the same Instagram handle at thefreedomtolive.ca. That's where people can find me on my website. I'm mostly active on Instagram in terms of social media. I just started doing a lot of Clubhouse talks, and I'm growing on there, which is really fun and exciting, because it's like that classroom effect.
Yes. Yep. And able to reach more people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a surreal experience where you're speaking to people that you can't see and they can't talk back. So I'm still wrapping my head around that. But that's where I am today.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. It's been such a pleasure getting to interview. Thank you so much for being on the Integrative Health Coach Success podcast. And we'll hopefully be in touch soon.
An absolute pleasure. Can't wait to tune into more episodes.
Okay. Thanks so much, Stephanie. Keep doing your amazing work.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.